we're going to learn about real-world applications for zero-knowledge proof, all about privacy. And to start, we'd like to welcome from Yap Global, your moderator. Please welcome Samantha Yap.
Samantha Yap!
In the yellow chair.
In the yellow chair. And now, in the pink chair, Dmitry Khovratovich. Khovratovich.
I bet even he can't pronounce his name.
How horrible was that? The worst ever.
That was pretty bad
That was good.
there, Travis. Sir, we have a microphone for you, Dmitry.
He's a senior cryptographer. He's a really smart guy.
Next up, we have this gentleman from ZCoin.
In the green chair.
I don't think it's a relation, but it is Reuben Yap. Please welcome
Reuben Yap. Come on down. You're the next contestant on Panelathon. Lots of panels today. All right, and next up, we have the COO of Zcash, Jack Gavigan. Welcome to the stage, good sir. Doing awesome.
The crowd goes wild.
Be the best panelist ever. You can do it, guys.
Now I can say I know Jack.
You can.
Before I didn't. You never heard that before.
And in the blue chair.
Yeah. Oh, finally, from Elixxir, we've got Ms. Stephanie Vaughan.
Welcome.
So,
this is going to be the best panel ever, you guys.
I'm going to hand this mic to you, Stephanie. And the moment I do, your moderation begins.
Hello.
Are you ready?
Yeah. No.
Here we go. Go.
Okay, thank you. What an introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good? Okay, awesome. That was a amazing introduction. Well, then I could just get right into it. To begin with, before I introduce the panelists and what they do, firstly, my name is Samantha. I'm the founder of Yap Global. We're a PR firm with a focus on fintech, blockchain, and cryptocurrency startups. These guys are the experts on zero-knowledge proofs, and I'm here to just moderate and facilitate this discussion. So to begin with, I'm just going to go into the introduction. One of Bitcoin and blockchain technology's most notable features is its transparency. But just as we expect our financial histories to be kept private in traditional banking, the same should apply with cryptocurrency. As a result, privacy projects have emerged as a solution to ensure everyone's right to financial privacy in the cryptocurrency world. Some privacy projects use a form of zero-knowledge proof cryptography. Elixxir doesn't, and they use another privacy protocol, which we will go into later in this discussion. And for those of you who don't know what zero-knowledge proofs is, it's a method by which one party can prove another party that they know a value without conveying any additional information. For example, it can prove that a bank account has a certain amount of funds without showing the individual, transactions that make it up. Today, we're going to be exploring the multiple real-world applications of privacy protocols and zero-knowledge proofs in blockchain technology. And joining me to do so is Dmitry Khovratovich, a senior cryptographer for the Dusk network, which is a scalable, private, and compliant protocol that allows for security tokens and other dApps. Dmitry is also a well-known author of Equihash and Merkle tree proof algorithms. Then we have Reuben Yap, who is the COO of ZCoin. It's an open-source, decentralized privacy coin that focuses on ensuring financial privacy for its users. And Reuben was formerly a lawyer and founder of one of Southeast Asia's top VPN companies. Then we have Jack Gavigan, who leads product and regulatory affairs for Zcash, a digital currency with strong privacy features. He's a fintechnologist, a word that he invented, but I think it's a good term. Focus on virtual currencies and blockchain technology. And lastly, we have Stephanie Vaughan, who is the CFO of Elixxir, a decentralized blockchain protocol which ensures speed, privacy, and security on a global scale. Elixxir is led by David Chom, who I'm sure you're aware of. He did the keynote yesterday, and he's the inventor of digital cash. So to begin with, can each of you, starting with Stephanie, give us an example of how zero-knowledge proofs or other privacy protocols can be applied in the real world?
So one example people use a lot is like going into a bar and being able to show your identity, or not have to show your identity rather, but still be able to walk in, and they know that you're over 18 or over 21.
Cool. Jack?
One application that I've been looking at a lot recently is in the field of KYC. So at the moment, if you want to prove your identity to a bank, you have to submit all this supporting information, give them a copy of your passport, utility bills, all this sort of stuff. The zero-knowledge proofs hold out the possibility that we will be able to do that once and then not have to do it again every time we open an account with a different financial institution or a bank or an exchange or a stockbroker or whatever.
So ZCoin has recently helped the Thai Democrat Party carry out its primary elections, and one of the very prominent use cases of zero-knowledge proofs is in e-voting, where you can prove that a vote has happened and it has not been tampered with, and not which way he has voted. So it's kind of like providing sort of a proof that the vote has not been tampered with, but then without showing which way the voter has voted for. Yeah.
And Dmitry?
Well, actually, zero-knowledge proofs are all around us, and quite recently, all the entities around try to record all our actions, and we don't really want that. For example, when you buy a monthly bus ticket and you present them like several times a month at different buses, you don't want the bus company to record which bus you use and how frequently and from which area and so on. And what you really need is to prove that you can ride this bus without disclosing anything else about you.
Yeah, great. So I want to go back to Stephanie. So Elixxir does not use zero-knowledge proofs, but could you explain how Elixxir's approach is different and how it ensures privacy in some of the products that you offer, like payments?
Sure. So Elixxir uses David Chaum's mix technology, which he invented in 1979 is when it first came out, actually. And then mix technology is a way to use a multi-party computation to secure transactions, if that makes sense. So one big example of mixed technology is Tor uses kind of a mixed technology. But Elixxir uses actually David's CMix, which he invented about 10 years ago, and he found out a way to speed up the mixed technology by doing like public-private key encryption on nodes like in advance in a pre-computation. And so Elixxir is a faster version of a mixed technology, and it secures all the metadata associated with any transaction.
Yeah.
So including payments and messages.
Okay, cool. Thank you. And Jack, how does Zcash currently use zero-knowledge proofs? I mean, what are some use cases for the average user who are not familiar with?
So Zcash implements a specific type of zero-knowledge proof, the ZK snark, and it applies it to the cryptocurrency use case. So if you think of Bitcoin, in order to spend a Bitcoin, you need to prove that you have the private key that corresponds to the public address that Bitcoin currently resides in. When you're creating a Bitcoin transaction, the inputs need to equal the outputs, so you don't create money out of thin air. And with Zcash, you can prove those things without having to reveal the address that you're sending the coin from or to, or the amount that's being transmitted. So we use zero-knowledge proofs to prove that the transaction is valid and that's been sent by the authorized person without revealing who that is, without revealing who it's going to, and without revealing how much is being spent.
Mm-hmm. And what are people making the transactions for? I mean, can it be used for, I mean, has it been integrated into, like, for us to, like, buy things online? Or, I mean, what are people using Zcash for?
So they're using it to make donations to organizations like the Internet Archive and WikiLeaks. Yeah. They're using it, there's a farm in New England which sells meat, and they accept Zcash.
Okay. Interesting.
So our head of community has this, gets all her meat from this farm that she buys with Zcash. People are using it for pretty much the same type of things that they use, any other cryptocurrency for, but it's got a specific application where privacy is important. So, for example, we've seen some uptake in Venezuela where people are concerned that they want to be able to spend money or accumulate wealth without it being open and transparent so that people can come and steal it from them.
Yeah, I think that's really good, those examples, because it helps people kind of, understand and visualize how you actually use this technology.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about a lot of the things that you spend your money on, the magazines you subscribe to, the political parties you donate to, you don't necessarily want all that information to be public, and that's where Zcash can come in.
Yeah, and Reuben, could you expand on that voting example? Because I understand that ZCoin, they facilitated the first large-scale blockchain like e-voting platform for the Thai Democrat Party last year in November. How was zero-knowledge proofs used for anonymous voting?
Actually, during that example, zero-knowledge proofs weren't used because actually we use something much simpler, Shamir secret sharing.
But if you were to explain, like, how can it be used in place? Yeah.
Well, what you'll be doing is, obviously using a zero-knowledge proof, right, that you actually voted. And so what you'll be able to do is to check that, first of all, that all the votes were tallied correctly and who are the people are voting, but not which way they are voted. I guess that's one way to do it. I think there's recently some scandals, like with the Swiss Post system in Switzerland. They also use a type of zero-knowledge proofs. But I do feel that when we're talking about like nationwide type of applications of e-voting or even zero-knowledge proofs, we have to be really careful because I mean, we've seen, all of us, we've suffered bugs, we've suffered like flaws in our cryptography, and I don't think we're quite ready. Yeah, like, the Swiss Post, they claim to be audited, and, there were so many flaws in their system that shows that, what's the point of having a zero-knowledge proof that proves all these things when you can fake the proof? So I do think we have to be a bit cautious there. I do think that's maybe like in the future when the technology matures, but probably not right now. Yeah.
But on that, I mean, Dmitry, would you be able to share what will it take for zero-knowledge proofs to be applied to real-world applications and for it to be safe?
Yeah, well, in our project at Dusk Network, we try to make zero-knowledge proofs as trivial, as natural as possible to for a real user. So like the same way you pay with your fiat money and you don't even know that they don't have any name on your account. The same way in our network, you make stealth transactions, you vote anonymously, you participate in auctions, and all this happens with privacy implicitly, and you don't have to make any additional efforts to make your actions private, which I think from this design point of view is very helpful for zero-knowledge proof, like being widespread.
Yeah, and building on from what Reuben was touching on, and whether we can trust these privacy protocols, because they're ultimately they're algorithms, and can we, the average users, actually trust them? So I mean, back to Reuben, cryptocurrency has been an avenue for fraud and illicit financial behavior, and people want to know where money moves, but why is it important to protect the privacy of transactions, and why is it important for us to protect financial privacy?
I mean, recently, even France was recently talking about banning privacy cryptocurrencies, and the scapegoat has always been money laundering, terrorist funding, and it's quite unfortunate that privacy is linked to this type of things because yes, there are some risks there. However, there are legitimate use cases for privacy. Like, for example, when I pay someone for a cup of coffee, why does he have to know potentially, if I pay using Bitcoin, he potentially knows, oh yeah, he got this Bitcoin from Binance, he probably has this much of money, maybe he transacted at these other places. And if you start doing repeated transactions, this type of things can reveal a lot of the intimate details of who you are. And why should the person that gives you coffee should know that? And we have to realize that, especially in blockchain where it's transparent, every single transaction is verified and all the links are all open. It's even more important there compared to, let's say, traditional finance where there's kind of like a wall where public people can't look in. So I do think that we have to look at privacy not about hiding things, but about having the ability to choose what we reveal to the world, and we are not forced to do this just because we have to. Yeah.
Yeah. Jack, oh, sorry, Stephanie. Well, I was going to touch on Jack first. How trustworthy is zero-knowledge proofs combined with blockchain technology on Zcash? How does the system work on its own without, the need for trusted third parties?
It's as trustworthy as the quality of the implementation, I would say. So one thing that we've done with Zcash is we've written a proof that it is secure, and this is quite common in academia. If you and cryptography, you can write a proof that a particular system is secure. There will always be bugs, there will always be problems like that. You can't get around it completely, and I think Dmitry makes the right point that this technology needs to mature. We need to get used to it. There are mistakes that will be made, and that's just the natural evolution of a technology. We have it with all sorts of technologies. They go through an evolution. They get better. We understand them better. I think with zero knowledge proofs, it's a relatively new field. Zcash was the first wide-scale implementation or deployment of ZK snarks, specifically. So yeah, it's new. It'll take time to mature. But the only way it's going to get there is if we try it, is if we work with it and we put it out there in the wild and we let people, try and break it. And that's how we learn, by doing.
Yeah. Stephanie, you were going to say something?
I guess I was going off of your earlier comment about just we need to have privacy in sort of not just our payments, which you mentioned, but in all of our transactions. So at Elixxir, we looked at what it would take in order to get this sort of consumer level privacy, but also just what it takes to bring the blockchain to the consumer. And we came up with, and I don't want to forget them, even though I hear David say them all the time, but speed, security, true privacy, and scalability. So at Elixxir, we have one answer to that, which is using the CMix, and we have a messenger, and to prove it, like you just said, we'll run it in AlphaNet over the summer, and people will be able to test it for themselves, so there's no metadata associated with any of these messages or transactions.
Yeah. I mean, what would you say the main obstacles for your users to adopt, these?
I think the main ones are the four I just said, but probably specifically speed of the transactions, and to have it to be able to use it on your phone, as we were talking about kind of before we came in here. Because if you can't use it on your phone and you can't use it in all of your transactions, it's not seamless in your life, people choose this sort of speed over that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we can turn to Dmitry, who's the expert as a cryptographer here. You mentioned that mistakes can happen in security proofs. So, what is one, example of a mistake that can happen and its consequences?
It's almost always happens every second paper in cryptography. Later, it's been discovered that there is a bug. And in our real-world application, it's very important that we can always revert our actions, that we don't have any we don't run any setup phase which would cost us too much. Because imagine you've built the Eiffel Tower, and at the very end you discover that its lower level is built of paper, not of metal. And there can be two approaches, take it out completely, or teach people how to use it carefully, 10 people at most on the Eiffel Tower. And of course, the second approach is not very good, but the first approach is not good either. So probably you should just avoid taking these actions that would make you make a difficult choice.
I understand that in different privacy protocols and the way it's implemented, there are different layers behind it. So turning to Jack, with Zcash, you mentioned that Zcash has implemented an upgrade of zero-knowledge proofs called ZK snarks, which is said to create verifiable trust. Could you expand on the layers of privacy that it ensures users?
So Zcash, there's a transparent layer, as we call it, which is pretty much identical to Bitcoin. You can transfer coins around. They're visible, just like Bitcoin transactions are. And in fact, we forked the Bitcoin code base to create that layer. You also have the shielded layer. And this is where you take a transparent coin and you shield it. And at that point, it disappears from the public's visibility. You can then transfer that shielded coin. So I could send a shielded coin to Reuben. The rest of the world, when looking at the blockchain, will be able to see that a transaction has happened, but they won't know who it's from, they won't know who it's to, and they won't know how much it was for. You know, so that's how layers work on the Zcash side. We sometimes refer to as the zero knowledge security layer, ZSL. But yeah, it just gives you that optionality of being able to transact transparently and very quickly, whereas creating the shielded transactions brings the benefits of very strong privacy, but a little bit more complicated and a little bit more computational power is required to generate those transactions.
So essentially, like zero knowledge proofs needs another layer of security on top of that.
I wouldn't say it needs another layer of security on top of that. I think it adds a layer on top of. So if you think of Bitcoin as being version 1 of cryptocurrency,
yeah.
I think different. So Ethereum added programmability, but not privacy yet. Zcash added privacy. You know, they added different layers of functionality on top of them.
Yeah, and Reuben, so ZCoin operates differently to Zcash, although both of you slightly differently. I mean, so ZCoin you mint and burn, and burn spent coins to ensure that it balances privacy and auditability of supply of coins. Could you maybe expand on how ZCoin works and the different layers?
Well, currently ZCoin uses an earlier protocol called ZeroCoin. So Zcash uses ZeroCash, which was meant to be an improvement on ZeroCoin, and in many ways it is. Well, the ZCoin's approach is pretty simple. You burn 5 coins, it disappears, and then you retain a zero knowledge. You then generate a zero knowledge proof that you can then redeem fresh new coins that basically come out of thin air with no previous transaction history. Now, with Zcash, that means they have something like totally shielded transactions. That means all that's reviewed is that a transaction has happened. With Zcoin, it's more of like breaking the transaction links. But sort of like now we're moving towards a new privacy protocol, which we are deep in development in, which is called Atlantis, which would have similar type of feature sets as Zcash, but it's a much more simpler construction. And we feel that it's important to have multiple ZKP implementations. I mean, of course, like right now, and when everyone talks about ZKP implementations, everyone talks about ZK snarks, rightfully so as well. But we also feel that there's a room for alternative ZKP implementations that are simple and much easier to understand, and that's what we're also seeking to achieve at Atlantis. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there's a whole host of research going on into this space. So one of the scientists behind Zcash is working on ZK Starks, which are an improvement in terms of how they're constructed, but right now are less efficient. There's ZK Sharks that we can expect to see published in the not too distant future. You have bulletproofs. Like there's a whole range of areas of research here, and it's great that we have all this research. In a way, the cryptocurrency market has been funding research because it's generated interest. It's provided a means of paying people for doing this research, and it's really great that we have different approaches. Because if we have one approach and it turns out that it doesn't work so well, then you go back to square one. Where if we have multiple approaches, then we're going to end up perhaps not with one best one, but there will be different ones for different use cases.
Yeah, and Stephanie, moving on, beyond the layers of privacy, what do you think people actually want in a privacy system in terms of protection?
I mean, I think people want consumer level metadata protection or consumer level true privacy, as I said before. But maybe I could explain a little bit about how we're different in our blockchain
Sure.
than the zero knowledge proofs of ZCoin or Zcash. So we have a multi-party computation, which is just a group of nodes from a larger set of nodes. So imagine a few thousand nodes, and then imagine a small group that kind of write this multi-party computation together. And that happens every second. So every second, like a message and a transaction and a payment is put through the system, and it's secured, and there's no metadata associated with it, and it comes out the other side, and then the payments are updated on a Merkle tree. And that's sort of how we work, which is a little bit different than the protocols that you guys have heard about.
Dmitry, do we need zero-knowledge protocols in our applications to be completely secure, or just secure enough for the average user, or for the function that it's being used for?
Well, they should be completely secure, but there can be different levels of complete security.
Yep.
And one, like, there can be security that would last 100 years, that would be security that lasts several months. And at Dusk, we plan to have like several levels of security, because we can definitely increase the performance, but not sacrifice security for the term where the data is available. So if you have data that is important in the next 1 week, then we can have security, something like 80 bits of security or something, and thus have much better performance, which is better for customers.
Yeah. But how do where do you draw a line on how secure you make your privacy protocol for I mean, you apply that privacy protocol. I mean, how? Yeah, you said that you could have security that lasts 100 years or
yeah,
less.
By security that lasts 100 years, I mean that if we take all the world combined power, that in the next 100 years they cannot break it. Or if I mean like 1 month security, I mean that if we take the capabilities of the entire world and in 1 month they cannot break it. They maybe will be able to break it in 1 year, but in a year that's not important anymore. So this means complete security, but for shorter periods of time.
Yeah. Would you be able to give us some examples of the different levels of security and what it is used for? Like some use case examples so we can kind of visualize it?
Yeah, well, for example, the same like monthly bus ticket, it might take you, I don't know, you can forge a monthly bus ticket, but if a forged ticket costs you 5 times more than just buying it at a counter, that is just not worth it. Mm-hmm. The same for the smaller security levels. If to break it, it will take you more time than you needed to exploit the data, you will not just undertake it.
Yeah, interesting. Jack, going back to how you were saying that there's lots of research and development going on into developing zero-knowledge proofs, why is this important to understand, and how have you been keeping up, and why is it important that everybody needs to kind of be on top of what's new and what's out there?
It's probably not important for everyone to be on top of what's new, because there's quite a gap. There could sometimes be quite an amount of time between the invention of a new, form of cryptography or a new technology and its real-world deployment. So ZK snarks have been around for a while. Zerocash, I think the paper was written in 2014, but it didn't actually get deployed at Zcash in the form of Zcash until the end of 2016. So I think what for the vast majority of people, I think it's worth understanding what's being deployed, but for not everyone needs to know what the cutting edge of research is. People like Dmitry will, because that's his daily bread and butter.
Yeah, I meant
for me, it's more a case of if this thing does become practical, what are the potential use cases? So yeah, it depends on what your role is and what your interest is as to whether you need to keep track of all the developments.
Yeah. Let's talk about the scalability of privacy protocols. So Stephanie, what are some initiatives that Elixxir is working on to scale its privacy protocols?
So
protocol?
because we don't actually use a zero knowledge proof, it's a little easier for how we've kind of built our network to be scalable just from the solution in the beginning using the multi-party computation. So one thing we're doing, as I said before, we're putting out our messenger that people will be able to use and test in AlphaNet. And then we're actually taking BetaNet node applications right now and kind of running an open application process for that. And the last day to apply actually is Friday, but we'll finish that process as well, and then we'll move the messenger and the payments on to the BetaNet. So.
Right. And Reuben, how can zero knowledge proofs help with storing large blockchains?
Well, there's actually something that's using ZK snarks right now. It's just called like Coda Protocol, which is a separate project. And it's all about like succinct blockchains that you don't need to have the entire set of data. You basically use a zero knowledge proof to verify that the transactions are valid. So what that means is that no matter how big the blockchain is or whatever it is, you only need like a fixed size of 20 kilobytes that you can just run on your phone and have a very high degree, because like with light wallets now, you kind of still have to trust a certain amount, but with using like zero knowledge proofs to sort of act as a verifier, then you're getting much more, I guess, like certainty that you're not being compromised, while expanding, like you just basically almost can have like the blockchain on your phone and verify it yourself using the zero knowledge proof. So I think that's really interesting as well. Yeah.
How far away do you think we are from having that?
I think it's pretty close. I mean, like you just
Really
look at
close.
Coda Protocol. I think they have something working already, maybe.
Yeah.
I'm not sure.
Well, Dmitry, what do you think needs to be put in place, the cryptography sense, in order for privacy protocols to be scalable?
Yeah, we just have to always think about verifier and prover scalability, and we should kind of stick to protocols which provide the smallest communication costs, and so that for the verifiers, it's particularly important that whoever takes your zero knowledge proof for verification, it doesn't take him that much time, because if it does, then we might face a denial of service problem, and definitely we should use proof systems that doesn't work like this.
Yeah, cool. Well, we're just ending right on time, but before we end, I'd like to close with maybe a few one-liners from the panelists on where you see the future of real-world applications of privacy protocols. So perhaps starting with Stephanie?
Sure. I think it's like consumer level privacy on your phone.
Is where it's gonna.
Yeah, I mean,
Where it's
through
gonna
all
go
in all
and
your
what's gonna
transactions.
happen,
I mean,
yeah.
I think we'll get there.
Cool, Jack.
I think that 10 years from now, every single cryptocurrency is going to have some form of privacy protection.
Yeah, I would actually echo that, like, especially with the governments looking at targeting privacy coins, and where do you actually draw the line when many of these cryptocurrencies are implementing privacy features, Ethereum, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin. So what's a privacy coin? Then I think governments should really start thinking about how to address this problem rather than just put the stopgap of banning it, which doesn't really solve the problem.
That's good. Dmitry?
Yeah, I really hope that in the near future our use of social networks will be much more private than these days, so that like no company could possibly gather our usage of networks like Facebook or Instagram and selling this to third parties, and really zero knowledge proofs can help us with that.
Thank you very much. And with that, that's the end of our panel discussion. Can everyone please give the panel a round of applause?